You know, if there's one thing that I can't stand, it's a cheap bastard. Especially can't stand when it's grandparents with a lot of money who are cheap bastards to their grandkids. Next.
And Dawson too. Take him to her. Hey, Marsha. Hey, darling. I'm gonna cry. You're so sweet. First grandchild? Yes.
Separating the truth from the lies. Underneath the Noonan, Georgia chemtrail sky, you're about to receive a dose of the shock treatment. The normal thing for a grandparent when they're meeting a grandchild for the first time is that the grandchild is basically either very young and maybe distance, maybe 4 years old, like at the beginning of this clip, and maybe the parents lived, very far away from the grandparent, and it took a couple of years to finally get out west or out east or something like that to visit. That's normal. Or the child is a baby. That's normal. What's not normal is, and this bud's for you if the shoe fits wear it, grandparents, shitty grandparents, cheap grandparents. If you you want to abandon your grandchild because your child screwed up the marriage, and so the other spouse has the custody, right? And then you get jealous because the other spouse has the custody and your child doesn't, of the children, right? Because your child was no good in the marriage, and that's why there's a divorce. And the shitty grandparent will just not bother with the grandchild for years on end, maybe, and they're rich, loaded. This is some of them out there loaded, right, and want nothing to do with their grandchild because they begrudge the spouse that has custody of the children, the grandchildren. So why take it out on a grandchild? Shitty lousy grandparents. You claim you're a Christian too, don't you? You claim you're a Christian, but take a look. 13 years, 15 years, how many years you let go by as the good grandparents, the one that were there opening up the house to the children. They didn't have to do that now in the golden years. They didn't have to do any of that. Take them on lavish vacations, take them to restaurants left and right, buy them clothes, take them to doctors, stay up late and do homework for them, throw money at them when they need money, and a bunch of them take them to church and stuff like that, good stuff, right? Grandparents didn't have to do that, the good ones, but they did it. That's what makes them good. Meanwhile, you got the shitty grandparents that are pissed off that the spouse, the parent that's not their kid, has the custody of the grandchildren. So they're just suddenly going to just not bother with their grandchildren for a lot of years, right? Loaded grandparents, loaded with money, and so the good grandparents and the good parent is raising those children all those years, and then all of a sudden, these children, it happens. These children want to go the way of the world. The children want to go the way of the world, and then to the shitty grandparents, the grandparents that, instead of opening up their home to them or one of their rental homes for free, want to charge them $600 a month or whatever, make money off the grandchild. What kind of a grandparent is that? Especially after you haven't been there for a lot of years for your grandchildren, and you're going to go and charge them for rent. But that's just an example. These are selfish, materialistic, and they claim, even if they claim they're Christian, that's what you are. Selfish and materialistic, and a shitty grandparent out of their lives for all those years, and then you want to play cleanup when they're older and just say how loving you are to them. Just, oh, we're loving, we just always wanted to be there. No, you didn't. If you wanted to be there, you would have been there from the get-go. You never would have just not been there and disappeared out of their lives. But these are the type of grandparents that they want to hold a grudge against the other spouse that has custody, And so they'll take it out even on the grandchildren. They won't come around. They won't send them gifts. And when they do, they send them, with all the money they got in the world, they send them coloring books from friggin' Dollar Tree and crayons. You kidding me? Once in a blue moon for Christmas. This was could be at the beginning or even throughout. You're a cheap bastard on top of it. All right? These kids. Meanwhile, the good grandparents that don't have nearly as much money, I mean, they're doing okay, but they don't have the kind of money that the shitty grandparents have. And they're sending them, taking on lavish vacations, restaurants, very fine restaurants, maybe going to resorts, Florida, tropical palms, you name it. Could be going to Dollywood, just Gatlinburg, you name it, fishing in Savannah, Tybee Island, everywhere, New York, multiple times, traveling up in the East Coast on vacations when they were younger. But they forget all this, these kids. They forget all that and they run to the grandparent that wasn't there for them, which is totally ridiculous, and then treats them like shit once they get over there to the dark side. But that's a shitty grandparent. Grandparents are not there for your grandchildren. You want to take it out on your grandchildren, and then you want to act like you're all innocent when they grow up. You ain't innocent, all right? You're not. Because if you want to be part of your grandchild's life, you would have been from the get-go. You never would have stopped. You would have been supportive of the other spouse, too. You wouldn't just not... That spouse that was once your favorite now all of a sudden isn't your favorite because your own shitty child screwed up the marriage and you didn't get custody of the kids, all right? That's the type of grandparents we're dealing with. There's not many of those out there, but they are out there, just like there's bad apples in every, in all sectors of society and types of people. But, just like there's shitty parents, there's shitty grandparents. Of course, there are a lot of grandparents nowadays, more and more, stepping up, and because my generation is failing them, and taking the kids in, the grandchildren in, sometimes taking, the mom and dad in along with them, and raising the kids, or helping raise the kids. Doing a lot of the work, leg work and stuff like that. I see a lot of that. And it's on the rise because you got a lot of this asshole generation, 2 Timothy 3 generation, is failing. It's selfish, they're materialistic, or they're just me, selfie. And also, a lot of times, also, it's because it's economically hard times. It takes a lot to actually make it, raising a family out there, especially if you're single. So... and it's getting increasingly harder to do so. So that's another reason why a parent might move back with his or her kids back home. But the grandparents, again, they don't have to open up their home, but the good ones do. Then you got the shitty ones that want to charge rent. They have all the money in the world. They own a lot of stuff, property, and they want to rent out to their grandchildren. Unbelievable, man. Haven't been there for over a decade in their kids' lives, grandchild's lives, and all of a sudden they want to act like they're angels. Well, you're not. You're not angels, all right? How dare you? You haven't been around when raising them during the hard times. That's when it's hard with children. That's where the work is done as a parent. Wiping their noses, taking them to the doctors when needed, staying up late to do projects at school. That's what the good grandparent does. The shitty grandparent is the one that's absent at a grandchild's lives and then wants to enter their lives and act like they were holier than thou all along when they weren't. All right, so get the memo, you shitty grandparents, especially you cheap bastards with a lot of money. It goes for anybody. I can't stand cheapos, El Cheapos. I just can't. You got the money and you're going to be squeaky cheap. And then some of these grandparents, because they like to do spite work, they'll try to come around and force visitation after being gone, after their kid, their own child, who happens to be a parent, happen to be out of their child's life for years on end. Then all of a sudden child support catches up with that person and the grandparents want to step in on behalf of the child that child support caught up with, and then all of a sudden wants to exercise that person's, put in quotes, rights to visit with the kids. Meanwhile, they haven't been there for 4 or 5 years right off the bat, and all of a sudden they want to barge on in and come and snatch the kids on the weekends and bully the parent that's a good parent with the letters from attorneys and shit, because they have tactics, these grandparents, especially with the one with money, these demonic grandparents, to do spite work against the good parents and the good grandparents, because that's all that is. Because if you really cared about being with your kids, you do the right thing. And then on top of it, when you pick them up for visitation, you don't stop to go to the bathrooms, the car is really hot, they're starving, you don't feed them shit until you get back to where you got to go. You might throw a corn dog at them. These are cheap bastards, they're not caring, and that's a form of abuse, by the way. If you got a hot car and the kids need, that's abusive. And then on top of it, you don't stop to go to the bathroom for the kids, they need to go. And then on top of it, they're starving. And then you finally get to back at your place, home, shitty grandparents, and you feed the kid a corn dog or some corn or some crap like that. These grandparents suck, man, and I'm putting them on blast. I can't stand it. I'm putting the good ones. I'm praising the good ones because there's a lot of good ones out there. But there's a big difference between a no good grandparent and a good grandparent. And the proof is you're not there. You no good grandparent for years on end. Then you want to make up excuses when they turn into be teenagers. You know, rebellious teenagers at that. And they want to finally they want to leave the good grandparents to go see the grass is greener on the other side and just do as thou wilt, because that's what the other grandparents do. Do as they wilt. Do as they wilt, you know, and so they find out that the shitty grandparents are truly shitty. The parent that was no good is still pretty much no good, and they screwed it up with the relationship with the good grandparents and the good parent, all for nothing, all because the grass is greener for these teenagers. Because once they grow up, they want to say, I don't want to go to church. And they let media control their head. They listen to crap rap music with poisonous lyrics. They think they're big shots when they hit 16, 17, 18. They want to buck the system. They say they don't have to answer to the good grandparent anymore. They don't have to tell them what time they're coming home and crap like that. And start romping around, you know, and staying out later and later. And finally, when the good grandparents and parent, you know, blows what they're doing out of the water, in other words, discovers what they're doing and it confronts the grandchild, they want to leave and go to the other side, the dark side. And then they realize that's exactly what they got, the dark side. And then it's too late, baby, it's too late. You know, you can't go back and redo this whole thing. You only get one shot, all right? That's why I say to grandchildren, don't be taking your grandparents or parents, or even your parents, for the good ones for sake, all right? And because these no good grandparents, they haven't been there for years on end. I don't know why anybody would want to go be with someone that's no good, that didn't treat them like you should treat them like shit in the sense that they weren't there. And then when they do try to do exercise, some form of visitation to do spite work after years of the kid not being there as a parent, want to do spite work when child support catches up with their kid, to spite the other parent. Oh, I'm going to start exercising my daughter or my son's visitation out of the blue after years of not exercising it, only to do spite work and cause emotional distress on the grandchildren who haven't been in with that bad parent for years on end, and are forced to do so. That's all spite work, and it's demonic. That's what these tactics of these bad parents and grandparents do, especially the ones that got money, these cheap bastards, all right? But they have money to hire an attorney to fight the good parent, right? So they're cheap with the grandchildren, they're cheap with the gifts. They rent out the homes instead of let them live there to the grandchildren that don't even have any money. When they finally do grow up and go to the dark side, the least the grandparent could do is, especially if they have the ability, is to let them stay in one of their homes for free or stay with them. But no, they want to charge. That's what they do, right? It's unbelievable, man. Shitty grandparents, man. You all grandparents that are doing a good job, doing right by your grandchildren, hats off to you. To you shitty, cheap grandparents that want to be cheap and not even send gifts or in your absence all those years, not even so much as a butt wipe or anything. You know you got a special place. You know where. Downstairs, down below, all right? Because you're nothing but, you're garbage, all right? You want to call yourself a Christian too, some of them. They ain't doing anything Christian at all. Everything they're doing is what's wicked. Not being your grandchild's life and spiting them, that's wicked. Being a cheap bastard, that's wicked in a way, being cheap. And, you know, and when you did a few times exercise your visitation rights, years after your kid was, who's the bad parent, was not around, you want to do spite work, when you pick them up and take them a 3-hour trip, you want to have a hot car, you don't feed them, you don't stop to go to the bathroom. So that's a form of abuse too. It happens. I'm telling you, man, this shit happens. It's just not being exposed the way it should be. But there's a lot of good grandparents, more than not. But the ones that are bad, they're truly bad. They suck. All right? And on top of it, the ones that are cheap on top of it. Unbelievable, man. They're unbelievable. So, yeah, cheap, shitty grandparents. You all suck. Unbelievable. Next time on the Shock Treatment.